Hi, I warmly welcome you. At a time when manufacturers are giving up on hot hatches, there's one hot hatch on the market, the Gazoo Racing Yaris, which in its first generation customers were literally fighting over, but in the second generation something very interesting happened. This is a car that's improved compared to the first generation, yet it's not as desirable a vehicle. It even got to the point where Toyota is offering discounts on it. What happened, we'll talk about with Kuba. You're very welcome to join us.
Hi, I'm Kuba from Ruda Śląska near Katowice, and today I want to show you my almost new second generation Gazoo Racing Yaris. My previous car was also a Toyota CHR. I really enjoyed driving that car, so I thought it would be nice to continue with Toyotas. Earlier at the dealership, I checked out other cars like the Supra and Gazoo Racing 86, but I didn't choose those two cars for a simple reason. The Supra is a typical two-seater car, and there was already a problem with buying it with the 3-liter engine because that's the only one I was interested in. I tried the Supra and Gazoo Racing 86, but the Supra being a two-seater was an issue. My wife suggested a smaller car since we already own an SUV. Get yourself something small for the city so you can drop the kids off at kindergarten on the way, and everything came together so that it had to be the Yaris Gazoo Racing. It's a compact car, it's for the city, it can carry 4 people because, let me remind you, this is and only ever will be a 4-seater version. There is no 5-seater version. And my wife didn't specify whether it had to be a fast or slow car, she just said it had to be small. To be honest, I've read a lot about how people bought both the first and second generations, whether in Poland or abroad. I think it's one big, well, excuse my language, but a circus. I'll refer to my generation, which is the second one. Soon we'll discuss what sets them apart, including several cool details and nice changes. However, when it comes to the purchase itself, I didn't sign up to buy the car. I signed up for a list of people who want to have this car. My advisor told me that signing up for this list doesn't guarantee that I'll get this car. I know it's exclusive, but it seems strange to me. After some time, I was in a business meeting and my phone rang. I saw it was someone from the dealership. I ignored the first call, the second and the third. I got a text message saying that my name, that I was qualified to buy. And we have to do it very quickly, because if not, my name will be lost and I won't have the chance to buy the Gazoo Racing anymore. And to be honest, I haven't come across a situation like this. I mean, I haven't read if anyone had a similar situation. But in my case, it looked like this. It was handled, I'll be honest, under the table. At a business meeting, I arranged my dealership, Gazoo Racing, where I chose everything. There isn't really much to choose from here because earlier in the form I already picked the manual transmission option, since this is the version with a 6-speed manual transmission. I also chose the additional very important person package, which I'll talk about later. Honestly, I still remember what happened at that business meeting, but I don't really remember how I managed to take care of it. It's strange that everything went according to plan, although there's also one thing that needs to be mentioned. That same day, I called again, calmly. Mr. Pan said that the second generation is heavily regulated by various laws regarding sales, assignment, and even export from the country. The second thing is that it's not possible after booking the car from selling this booking, which means in fact if someone paid a deposit and here a 10 was required right away. A deposit, there's no way to sell this deposit, which means there's no way to resell this car under a different name to another person or to another company. I got the first date for the car's arrival in Poland from Japan for September, and everything was lining up for me. Why? Because my previous Toyota, the CHR I mentioned earlier, my lease was coming to an end. Around the end of August, I thought it was perfect. At the end of August, I returned the car. At the beginning of September, I get the new one. I can ride my bike for a week or two, borrow a car. It's doable. But as the end of August got closer, it turned out that new car pickup dates started to appear. At first it was September 1st, then it became the end of September, then in the next emails it turned into October, then again mid-October and the end of October. And that's how it went on. So in reality, I got the car around November 11th. An interesting fact is that there was a little mishap here because the only thing you can choose in this car, the only one, is the body color. I went for the white pearl, but I think this isn't white pearl. I think it's just the standard white, the regular white color. I didn't complain since the car was already ready for pickup and I couldn't change anything.
My dear friends, the partner of this episode is MUBI. Poland, which is a well-known way for you to buy cheap insurance, is a comparison tool that checks offers from various insurance companies and prepares a ranking of the best and cheapest offers for you when you buy through MUBI Poland /Zakharov. Additionally, after purchasing a policy, you can also get 100 zloty cashback. Check it out yourself. After entering your car's details, you'll get a list of offers to choose from. Even if your policy isn't expiring right now, you can compare it to what you paid for insurance, which could help in the future. The link is in the description, so let's avoid overpaying.
It's worth mentioning how the second generation differs from the first, and really how the Yaris Gazoo Racing differs from the Toyota Yaris that we see every day used by many people. Actually, from the outside, if we look, it's the Yaris Gazoo Racing and the Yaris. There are only 4 things they have in common: the mirrors, the front lights, the roof spoiler, and the rear lights. And those are the only 4 features they share. The rest of the car on the outside is completely redesigned. We're talking about every part here: sides, fenders, bumpers, front, back, everything, of course. There's also no shortage of carbon in the car. The roof is covered with carbon. Of course, don't be fooled. This isn't real carbon. What we're seeing here is a film over carbon. Why the engineers decided to do it this way, I have no idea. I've seen a situation where the owner removed this film and underneath it there's real carbon. It's very nice. You could say it looks like marble, very elegant. For now, I've left the film on. I don't want to remove it yet, maybe in the future. When it comes to the differences between the second and first generation, it's worth mentioning that Toyota's engineers really listened to the feedback of the first generation owners and about how many, though rare, things should have been improved. And we're talking here about things that are really very subtle. For example, things typically related to mechanics. When it comes to things that are really subtle, the 2 biggest complaints from users have always been the driving position, and the engineers decided to lower the seat by 2.5 centimeters, which was a blessing for many drivers. And the whole mirror system with the camera was also redesigned, because earlier in the previous generation, in the first one, there was very little space between the mirror and the screen. And it was annoying, and it was annoying. That's why now not only has the cockpit been redesigned, but also this system, the mirror with the camera, and the front has also been redesigned. First of all, it should be mentioned that all the components in the bumper are separate elements in the first generation. If someone has seen, driven, or knows about it, they know very well that the problem was when the front bumper was a single piece, meaning if someone damaged the left part of the bumper on the track, unfortunately, they were forced to replace the entire bumper, even though only the left part was damaged. At this point, Toyota's engineers have changed that, and now the bumper consists of several parts. They also introduced a new side radiator because the engine was overheating. This was one of the most significant problems of the first generation when it comes to mechanical issues and parts. A lot of things have been corrected here, better rings have been introduced, and additional sensors have been added. Why? Because these were the kinds of problems that were often encountered in the first generation. What was happening with the car? When it comes to the rear, modifications have also been made here. The most distinctive modification is that the rear light was removed from the upper spoiler and moved to the strip on the trunk. Why? Because people with the first generation often simply replaced the spoiler with a more aggressive, sportier one. There was a problem. What to do with the removed light? In the same way, all the reverse lights and all the fog lights were mounted here so that there would be as few things as possible on the lower bumper, which is structurally a single element. This applies to the entire car. It's a very soft vehicle. Plastic parts are plastic, metal parts are metal, also the very important person package. First of all, it comes with new different QT-BBS rims, and it also includes premium JBL audio. I honestly don't see any difference between the regular speakers and the JBL because in my previous Toyota, I had the standard audio system. It comes with a lot of sensors, whether it's blind spot sensors, front or rear parking sensors, and there's also a heated steering wheel. When ordering the Gazoo Racing Yaris, we can either choose a color, the palette is huge because there are 5 colors, or the very important person package. And of course, the most important thing is the gearbox, whether it should be a 6-speed manual or the new patented 8-speed automatic gearbox developed by Toyota engineers. And here it's worth asking the question, why not an automatic? Looking from the perspective of the first generation, when this Toyota was a new car, and how many things, how many problems it struggled with that had to be fixed, I figured that if, for a car that had already been improved, a new one was specially created, this gearbox might also struggle with problems. Just like the very first generation, so I decided to go with the manual, which was already an improved version of the gearbox from the first generation. And secondly, I came to the conclusion that in a car like this, with such capabilities, a manual gearbox is better. Of course, it has its, maybe not flaws, but it loses in a few aspects compared to the automatic. We're not talking about comfort here, of course, because that's a different matter and you just can't compare the two. However, from what I've noticed, there are a lot of opinions, whether from the Polish scene or from abroad, because I try to keep up with it regularly. A lot of people have said that the automatic gets confused in track situations. In the second generation, power rose by 16 horsepower to 280 horsepower. People tested these cars on 98 octane fuel because that's also the recommended fuel to use. An interesting fact is that if you started driving on 95 after a few refuels, the car would throw an error. I don't use 95 since the dealership warned me not to fill up with it. And it turned out, coming back to the topic, that a car which was stock, not modified, running on 98 octane fuel was able to generate even more horsepower. The car, according to the manufacturer, accelerates to 100 km per hour in about 5.1 seconds. To be honest, I didn't count it because I still think that the car, even though it has 6,000 kilometers driven since November 2024 last year, is still breaking in for Lee. It's already had its first oil change. And here's an interesting fact that was shared with me at the dealership. This is official information from the top, so to speak, from Toyota, that when the car reaches the customer and the customer picks it up at the dealership, the car is already broken in at the moment I pick it up from the dealership. And on that same day, I could take it to the track and push it to the limit without any worries. Toyota allows something like that. The oil should be changed after 1,000 kilometers, and if not, then the first oil change should be done after 10,000 kilometers. And there is a mandatory inspection here, which means my inspection has to be done around the beginning of November to keep the warranty, which lasts for a full 3 years. Fun fact, the oil that's used here isn't the typical oil that's poured into all other Toyota cars. It's a special oil designed specifically for this engine. At this point, after about 6,000 kilometers, I have no complaints about this engine. It runs smoothly, it's nicely balanced, and interestingly, the engine is capable of handling more power. Because I've seen on some forums that people have even managed to get 500, 600 horsepower out of this car. It's also worth mentioning the costs here. Obviously, oil is something we can't avoid, and its price is set. But here's an interesting fact. When it comes to the brakes, this car has a pretty large disc in the front. It's about 356 mm, and the price for one disc is around 2,500 zlotys. The cost of brake pads for one side for 4-piston calipers is about 600 zlotys. So roughly speaking, replacing 2 discs. At the front, that's 5,000 plus the pads, another 1,200, so it starts to add up to quite a large amount. The rear is a bit cheaper because the pads are 400, and of course that's for one side, I keep repeating. And the disc is about 1,200 because that disc is smaller, around 250 mm. I hope I have to replace the disc in this car as late as possible. As for the interior, a lot has changed. Definitely, the most distinctive thing is the complete redesign of the dashboard. Unfortunately, people jokingly call it a dashboard from a typical van or delivery vehicle. In my humble opinion, the dashboard is unique, but it actually gives this car more of a sporty character. It's worth mentioning that all the buttons here are physical. Of course, you'll find things here that are typical for customization, like this USB port, which assumes that owners will add special distinctive gauges to monitor engine parameters. You can see that this handbrake disconnects the rear axle and the car doesn't have a rear wiper. When my wife learned about this and saw there was no rear wiper, she initially thought someone had broken it off and couldn't believe it. And it turned out that you can travel and drive this car every day without a rear wiper.
Let's do the 2-meter guy test now. Of course, you probably won't be surprised, only in the front seat. I won't squeeze into the back, you know why? I'll try to move as close to the steering wheel as I can. We can adjust the steering wheel here from very low to medium low. I'd like to raise the backrest a bit more, and now I'm in my proper position relative to the steering wheel. Also, there's still over 2 fingers of space above my head, really. There's free space, so for such a small hot hatch, I'll be able to drive here without any restrictions when it comes to space. Like I said, in the front, I'm not even trying the back.
When it comes to the trunk of the second generation Gazoo Racing Yaris, you'll see an impressive capacity of 170 liters, so you can actually fit quite a lot in here. Of course, the rear seat is foldable. There are no hooks, no buckles, nothing. The battery is located in the back, but what's even more interesting is the water tank. Yes, there's a water tank in the back. It's a tank that holds just under 4 liters of water, which is used to cool the intercooler. The car has this option, and here's an interesting fact. For all cars going to Europe, this is standard, but for cars going to other continents, it was an extra feature. The tank where we pour water, preferably demineralized, which ensures that during the so-called when the car is being pushed hard on the track, you can activate the water spray on the intercooler, which lowers the temperature by even about 20 degrees, so it's a really cool feature. However, I'm wondering about one thing. How do you remove that water from the hoses afterward? The temperatures will be low, so what then? That's why I haven't used it. Maybe I'll figure out how to handle it later.
I have to admit something to you. How did the first generation Gazoo Racing enter the Polish market at all? I was actually taking a break from YouTube and never had a chance to drive the Gazoo Racing. I know it's in the press park. But my schedule is so packed that I decided not to squeeze it in. So you could say that thanks to testing used cars or showroom models, I sometimes even fill in gaps that theoretically I shouldn't have. For now, just around the city, the only thing I can say after the first few seconds of driving is that I love this gearbox. It kind of reminds me of Mazda. Very short throw, very distinct, very precise.
While downshifting from third to second gear, second gear in my case seems hard to engage. I read about it and it turns out this is a problem that doesn't only happen to me. How did people handle it? They didn't. They left it as is. You could say, of course, that on foreign forums it often went away on its own.
Is this the reaching out that you're talking about?
Yes.
This is not engine brake-in?
But the transmission, yes, this is the break-in of the transmission.
So far from fourth to third gear, it's like, yeah, it's super mechanical and just the way it should be. Exactly, second gear. Yes, I always associate second gear with that. In most manuals, yes, you need a bit more attention, a bit more care, yes.
The movement is different though, because it's a transition from one plane to another. However, what I noticed after these 6,000 kilometers is that the car really likes to hold on, because that's when it actually has the most torque. Above 3,200 revolutions per minute, At first it was really hard for me to get used to the idea of keeping such high revs in a car like this every day, but you can get used to it. And now I drive like that every day, just keeping at least 3,000 revolutions per minute.
You say the car likes it, but right now at 50 kilometers per hour, the computer is telling me to shift from 4th to 5th gear, so I shift from 4th to 5th. It actually goes in at around 1900, and it's boring, it's not boring, it's boring, it's boring. Another thing, we're driving now on freshly laid asphalt with no lines, there's nothing here. And just a moment ago, the steering wheel was being pulled out of my hands like, hey, well, okay, at 80 here we can. I missed out a lot not driving the Gazoo Racing.
Yeah, and here it's really nice that the car takes the corner. In my opinion, actually she, because I jokingly refer to her.
That's exactly how I see it. I hear Yaris.
I say Yaris, and sometimes tease my wife by calling her Grażyna, since Gar stands for Grażyna. She's the queen of corners, not the champion of the straight, as colloquial as that sounds. We have limited slip differentials front and rear, and the front limited slip differential is especially helpful. Long corners at speeds of 120 with the gas pedal pressed down, it handles them easily.
Like the suspension. It doesn't lean at all on those corners we've already passed. Well, that's really impressive. In reality, it will probably lean just a little even during the Moose test, which we'll do here at around 50 soon. But I have to say, for such a small car, I'm surprised at how much it still gives the impression of speed. Because I just looked thinking we need to accelerate to 50, and we're already at 50. And theoretically, the sound and the feeling from the movement would make you think there should be more sensations than the actual speed, but there are actually even a bit less. Interesting, it's loud and mostly comes from the back. I don't know what's happening there.
The car is totally uninsulated, so it's loud. Another thing is you can't turn it off at all. It's at minimum. For me, it's muted as much as possible, which means boosting the sound from the exhausts. For me, it was always abstract. I never understood it. That's the engine, that's the exhaust, and you have to live with it. But it still stays at some minimum level, and you just have to get used to the rest. We kind of sit, when you sit, it's like being in a can, because like I said, there's just sheet metal and no soundproofing. At speeds of 120, you can still talk. At speeds of 140, you have to talk louder. But at 140, the back can't hear the front. At speeds according to the signs, sometimes maybe a bit more, but let's be honest, there weren't any huge violations. It was more about overtaking. The computer showed fuel consumption was good, which I saw as a success, 8 liters. Wow, I thought this car is really economical. After 6,000 kilometers, the average fuel consumption is 10.5 liters.
And in the city, 8, like an electric car. Listen, it uses less fuel in the city than on the highway. Empty road, okay.
Sure.
The seat is great, the suspension is stiff, and I like the steering because it offered no resistance. I drove exactly how and where I wanted. It turned obediently, and the tire never lost grip since it didn't bend, always going precisely where it should. And basically, only the squeal of the tires revealed how much load this car had to transfer to the asphalt.
The basic drive mode is the normal drive, which splits the power 60 to the front, 40 to the rear. Then we have the next mode, gravel, which is almost 50-50 front to rear. It's literally 52 or 54 to the front and the rest to the rear. And then we have the track mode, which would suggest that most of the power goes to the rear, but here the computer still decides. We can turn on the track mode and still have a situation where we have 60 to the front, 40 to the rear, or its other limit. The other extreme is 30 to the front, 70 to the rear. There's no way to completely turn off the front, meaning everything goes to the rear. This option is exclusive to this special edition, as the Jaliski Group's second generation was released in 2 special editions.
I'll tell you, you really have to control yourself to stay within the speed limits. Because for him, there's no road with turns discouraging enough. Every turn is actually an opportunity to accelerate, not a reason to slow down.
As I said, the queen of turns.
The first generation was brilliant and the second one was improved, so why was everyone fighting over the first one and now they're fighting over the second one too? But somehow that momentum is already fading.
Yes, when the first generation appeared, it was 2020 and there were very few of these cars. Of course, there were voices saying that this is a very limited version, that once again there are sign-ups and miracles at KIU.
Poland remained in a strong position due to its solid standing in the European pool. Exactly, so they managed to get us quite a lot of those cars, relatively speaking.
Of course, people started buying those cars, signing up, getting them, but the number of people was greater than the number of cars, so the demand was very high. Unfortunately, a very unpleasant situation arose. Scalpers appeared, meaning they bought cars from the dealership for amount 10 and then very quickly resold them for amount 10 plus 10 or 20. I saw prices pushed up very high, even for brand new cars. This is the result of Toyota's actions with the second generation. That by buying and signing up for this car, I can't resell it now, I can't transfer it, I can't export it, because Toyota knew what was going on. Of course, scalpers, because that's what I'll call them. People who just wanted, to put it colloquially, to make money off this car, to make money off this car.
I would protect against that.
What? They miscalculated why. Simply put, it was about roads and cars. So there was a second wave of cars that appeared in Poland, and people had the opportunity to buy the first generation again in the showroom for a normal price, just as it should be according to the catalogue. And not from people who have 2 or 3 in their yard, because they thought it was such an exclusive commodity. And it got to the point where the prices of new and used ones, meaning someone who already had one in their yard or had one for sale somewhere, started to drop. And so everything somehow smoothed out and the first generation passed and no one knew there would be a second generation. I mean, I didn't see any news about a second generation, then it was released. Improved, like I said, both mechanically and with some solutions in many cases that I mentioned earlier, and people jumped on it again. I described what it looked like. However, this time I think Toyota made a mistake, because as of today, if someone wanted to, not necessarily at the dealership right next to their house, but in Poland they can easily find it, Toyota Yaris, which has a mileage of no more than 10 kilometers, so it's brand new, straight from the dealership and with a discount of up to 30,000. It was supposed to be an exotic, very limited car, but it turns out it's just sitting in the dealerships. If I had actually waited those 6 months, I would have had exactly the same car in a different color, and I would still have 30,000 in my pocket.
Did Toyota ever promise that this would be an exclusive product?
They said it would be limited. From what I understood, they wanted to get into rallies very quickly. I mean, they just wanted to get into rallies as fast as possible. The accountants concluded, hey, listen, this is selling really well. Let's go for it. Let's go into rallies our way, and we'll keep going with this car, and it's selling. I recently read that there will be a third generation of GR. The Yaris will be more stripped down because we know what the law looks like in the European Union and so on, but there will be a third generation. When? I don't know. If the second generation is already in showrooms, even in small numbers, I have no idea what they'll do with the third.
So that uniqueness started to fade as sales increased, and at this point the car lost its appeal, which can't be provided through equipment, but really only through not flooding the market. Exactly, from my perspective, this is a second car for the family. I definitely couldn't handle driving a car that's so noisy and so stiff, even at low speeds, because I actually haven't mentioned that at all yet. But every little pothole still makes the car bounce. And just like I'm aware that I'm driving this car not for any specific purpose, but just to enjoy its sporty character, I enjoy every pothole like that because I know I have the right suspension. That's exactly what I wanted, but if this were my daily driver, I'd probably end up resigning eventually. I need something more comfortable, but otherwise this fully delivers on the promise. Kuba, thanks for showing the car.
Thank you as well.
I admire your deep knowledge, and I listened with pleasure myself because, as I said, this is my first contact, so thanks to you I also learned a few things about this car from such a unique perspective because you're the owner after a certain amount of mileage.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and see you in the next videos. Bye.